And I think what matters to people right now is that we're in a state of crisis. I was just talking to somebody earlier about, you know, the changes in the economy. You were talking to me about, you know, what's happened here. And really what has happened is we're losing the middle class. You know, we're in a situation where people are concerned about health care. They're concerned about their jobs. They're concerned about making a living. They're concerned about their houses being worth less than what they owe on the house. They're concerned about, you know, having lost a property. These are really the concerns of the everyday person, is that the economy is not what it was, you know, just a few years ago. We weren't concerned about these items. People had equity in their houses, times were good. So what's changed? What can we do to straighten it out? I mean, that's really the big question. And what we can do, there's a lot of different things. We have to look at what built the middle class. Number one, it was public education. Supporting public education really is essential. By supporting public education, we can build an educated population. If you look at what's happening around the world, we're competing with people globally. You know, we're in a globalized world. We're in a globalized situation where we have to compete against other countries. And you have to have an educated workforce. And what's built the middle class in this country is public education. And right now, what are we seeing happening in public education? Cutbacks. Just cutbacks. You know, we're just cutting back, and it's cutting back on something that's very essential for our long-term recovery, and that's the long-term recovery. I lost my job because of the state cutting back on a program I was doing. Right, and so what's happening? We're looking at a whole generation that's not getting educated, and then we're looking at the generation that they do go to college and they have these huge student loans because they're not going to publicly funded education. They're coming out of an education system. Yes, they got a degree, but they have a huge debt that they have to, the burden of this debt. And that wasn't the way it was a few years ago. A few years ago, people came out of college, they might have a minimum amount of debt because it was publicly funded. So those are some of the things that we have to look at really, is health care. We have to look at housing. How do we recover the housing market? That's something that, you know, I've been a real estate broker for 20-some years, and I know about housing. I know how it recovers. And what happened is we had an over-speculated bubble. We had a period where lending was too lenient. Anybody, I mean anybody, could have got a loan. All you had to do was show up and they would give you a loan. That's what caused the overspending, and a lot of people did. They said, I didn't qualify, but give me the loan, and they got their loan for the house. But what's happened now is we've swung the other way, where people are not able to qualify to get loans. So if you want to buy a house, it's difficult to qualify to get a loan. If you want to expand your business or start your business, it's difficult to get a loan. So these are things that if we bring it back, not to where it was, but bring it back to the middle. Bring it back to the middle where if you're a decent risk for a business, a decent risk for a house, that you're going to be able to get that loan, you're going to be able to get that house, and you're going to have a chance. You know, and that will stimulate the economy. That will help lead us out of a recession, especially in this area, because the housing was a very important segment of it. So you have to look at that: housing, healthcare, education. Those are the keystones that we support as Democrats. Now, the other thing, you look at how did the country get in such big trouble in the deficit? How did we end up there? Well, right now you're looking at the wars. There's several factors there. We've had wars for 10 years that have not been paid for, and those are wars that are coming to an end. Thank goodness that this end of this year, the Iraq war is finally ending. The troops are coming home. Let's give it up for Obama. You know, let's hear it for Obama that the Iraq war is finally ending. You know, so the troops are coming home on that. In Afghanistan, he has that on schedule in 2014. That eventually will end. And so you're looking at the difference too in Obama's policy his international policy. He did step in Libya. He did do that as an international coalition. He got a lot of support from other countries. They actually led the coalition. That's much different than in the years when George Bush was president. And that was a limited mission. So if you look at the deficit, getting back to that, the deficit, because that affects every one of us, is that deficit. Every time the United States writes a check, every time you get your Social Security check, every time they write a check to anybody, 40 cents on that dollar is borrowed money. That means every cent is being borrowed 40 cents. You spend $1. And that's unsustainable. We cannot continue doing that. So we have to move into a period of sustainability through deficit reduction. But the idea of reducing it, one is cutting down on the wars. That's one thing. But the other thing that changed was that under George Bush, he passed a tax reform bill. And that tax reform bill reduced the taxes for the wealthiest people in America. It did not reduce the taxes on the middle class. It just gave the rich a tax break. That needs to be redone to expire. Now that bill, Obama did sign that bill to extend it, but it's due to run out again. It's going to run out shortly, and hopefully he will not extend that. And that is one of the things. The other thing, of course, on the deficit, we do have to stimulate the economy, because in order to recover, we have to be, generally the economy has to be making a whole lot more money than it is now in order to bring in more money that solves the deficit. So those are the three things in terms of turning the deficit around. As far as turning the economy around, my number one thing is the lending needs to be loosened up. We need to start getting money to flow. That's what stimulates new business. We need to teach people how to be entrepreneurs. People need to step up and create their own businesses. You know, I think we all saw a lot of news recently about Steve Jobs passing away and his life and what he's done as an entrepreneur. And people ask, well, if another Steve Jobs steps out today, would people support him? Would they give him a loan? And we don't know. We don't know that that's possible right now. People are kind of down. So I think these are the things we're looking at as far as recovering. Now, myself, I'm starting my campaign. I have a campaign manager, Charles. I want to introduce Charles over here. My campaign manager. Can give it up for Charles. Charles has run other campaigns, and he's a dynamo. So we're looking at. I have some volunteers here. I don't know some of the other volunteers we have.
I think they might be inside.
They're inside. Oh, they're inside. Okay, they're working hard at the back booth. Okay, I have a little table in the back there. And that's where I have I have some books there. I have some sign-up sheets. I want everybody to sign up, so I have your email information, your phone number. I'm looking for people that are going to support the campaign, and you're my supporters. You know, it starts off with a small group. It's just like that Occupy Wall Street. How did that start off? With a small group of people. They said, we're going to go out and we're going to do something. And that's how change is done. It's always done. It always starts with one person, two persons, three persons, and it spreads. So, you know, we have to take our message. We want to, you know, spread the message of the Democrats. I think a lot of you are Democrats. I'm running as a Democrat. And I mean, basically, you know, one of the differences between the Democrats and the Republicans is the Democrats believe that if somebody, you know, if somebody is having a hard time in life, that they deserve not a handout, but a hand up. They deserve that, you know, we're not going to leave somebody behind. We're going to have a program that's going to help you, you know, whether it's a student loan, whether it's to get a house or whatever. You know, that's what Democrats believe. So I think we need to, you know, to support that.